Picture this HOA nightmare entitled, Karen steals my family's lake access, then melts down when I buy the entire lake and charge her $250 just to stare at the water. Scene, Brenda Whitmore, fake blonde HOA tyrant, hosts her posh barbecue on our ancestral shoreline. 40 alights, designer steaks sizzling, her boasting loud about finally banishing the riff-raff problem. That's when I stroll up with my ownership papers. The smell of expensive beef mixes with her panic sweat as conversations die. Event fee $250, I announce coolly, plus $50 per guest. Lakes under new management, dead silence, then pure chaos. Brenda shrieks, extortion. While guests scramble for their cars like roaches when the lights flip on. Coolers tumbling, kids crying, BMW tires squealing on gravel. 6 months of harassment. 17 bogus complaints trying to destroy my electrician's license. All because I didn't fit her community standards. Revenge is a dish best served lakeside. What would you do if your HOA tried to steal access to water you'd used for 20 years? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Bonus points if you've dealt with HOA drama. My name's Derek, and 6 months ago I thought the biggest problem in my life was my recent divorce. Boy, was I wrong. Turns out dealing with my ex-wife was like playing checkers compared to the four-dimensional chess match Brenda Whitmore had planned for my life. Let me paint you the picture. I inherited my grandfather's cabin in Pine Ridge, Colorado. Modest two-bedroom place built in 1962, sitting on 3 acres where the deer outnumber the neighbors. Grandpa Joe used to tell me stories about swimming in that lake every summer since he was a kid, back when the biggest controversy was whether trout fishing was better at dawn or dusk. The morning mist rolling off the water, the smell of pine needles mixing with coffee from my thermos, the satisfying crunch of gravel under work boots on that old dirt path down to the shoreline. This place was my church. I work union electrical. Good, honest living, calloused hands. The kind of job where you actually fix things instead of just talking about fixing things. After my ex took half of everything, including my favorite coffee mug, which still stings, this cabin was basically my entire net worth. But here's the thing. I was perfectly happy with that arrangement. My routine was sacred. Wake up at 5:30, stumble to the kitchen, grab coffee strong enough to wake the dead, then shuffle down to the lake for a few laps before the rest of the world started demanding my attention. The water temperature in July feels like liquid silk. In October, it'll make you question your life choices, but in a good way. The lake sits about 100 yards behind my property line. 15 acres of water so clear you can see the rocky bottom 12 down. Technically belonged to Ezra Kowalski, the 70-something hermit who'd lived in his cabin on the far shore longer than some trees had been growing. Simple arrangement that worked for 60 years. Ezra owned it. Families with historical access used it respectfully. Everybody minded their own business, like civilized human beings. Then the developers discovered our little slice of paradise, Willowbrook Estates. 43 houses that looked like they were designed by someone who'd seen pictures of rich people's homes, but never actually lived in one. Each McMansion trying to out-Mediterranean the next, squeezed onto lots that used to be meadow where elk would graze. The smell of fresh asphalt and landscaping chemicals replaced wildflower meadows practically overnight. Every house costs more than I'll make in a decade. Every lawn maintained by crews who show up at 6 a.m. sharp because, God forbid, anyone see an imperfect blade of grass. The kind of neighborhood where people buy 80,000 cars to drive 3 blocks to Whole Foods. Enter Brenda Whitmore, HOA president, real estate dynamo, and professional life ruiner. Think Real Housewife meets small-town dictator blonde hair that defies both gravity and nature. Always dressed like she's expecting cameras. Drives a BMW X5 that's whiter than her smile and twice as cold. Her house sits on what the marketing brochures called a premium lakefront lot, which sounds impressive until you realize they built a 4,000 FT monument to mortgage debt without actually owning an inch of lake access. The first time Brenda graced me with her presence, I was dripping lake water and probably resembling a very content wet dog. She materialized on my dock like some suburban succubus, all fake concern and sugar-sweet venom. Oh, hello. You must be Derek. The click of her designer heels on my weathered wooden planks sounded like a countdown timer. I'm Brenda Whitmore, president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I was hoping we could chat about some liability concerns. The way she said liability made it sound like I was personally responsible for every insurance claim in Colorado. I'm sure someone with your background understands we have property values to protect. She continued, eyes scanning my modest cabin like she was calculating exactly how much my existence decreased her net worth. Someone with my background. Lady, I wire the houses that keep your lights on. A week later, I found out exactly what Brenda's concerns looked like. A chain-link fence blocking the path my family had used since Eisenhower was president. Game on. Staring at that fence was like watching someone key your car in slow motion. The metal posts gleamed like surgical steel, concrete footings still dark with moisture, and every no trespassing sign positioned with the precision of someone who probably color codes their sock drawer. But here's the thing about being an electrician. 20 years of troubleshooting teaches you that every problem has a solution. You just need to find the right circuit breaker to flip. First stop, Jefferson County Records Office, where hope goes to die under fluorescent lights and the musty smell of decades-old paperwork. After 3 hours of squinting at surveyor maps that looked like they'd been drawn by caffeinated spiders having seizures, I struck gold. The lake, completely separate parcel owned by Ezra Kowalski, just like I suspected. Brenda's fancy HOA had about as much legal claim to that water as I had to her BMW. But here's where my day got interesting, and not in a good way. Turns out our suburban dictator had been busy little B. Public records showed she'd already made Ezra an offer. 50 grand for exclusive Willowbrook access rights. The woman moved faster than bad news in a small town. I drove out to Ezra's place where his cabin made mine look like a penthouse suite. Weathered wood siding, rusty hinges that squeaked like angry mice, surrounded by Douglas firs that had been growing since before skiing was cool. But when the old man opened his door, his eyes were sharp as January wind. "You're Joe's grandson," he said, studying my hands. "Got the same calluses. Your granddaddy helped my father build this place back in '62.